Welcome back to Buckle Up. Woo!
Hey.
Today's topic is back to the basics.
Buckle Up with Mike and Brian, September the 16th at 4 p.m. That's our next one. See you.
You know, and hey, if you guys have any ideas for things that you want us to talk about, send them in. I mean, we do these for you. And I know Brian feels the same way I do. These are all about trying to help you guys as much as we can.
Absolutely.
Because we want you guys to be successful. And for the youngsters out there, I mean, the real youngsters, I mean, you know, you and I are getting about as old as dirt, but that's a whole other story.
Oh yeah, dirt was invented after I was born.
There you go. But no,
I
seriously.
never thought I'd get old as dirt.
You know when you're in trouble? When you turn around and you say, these kids, and it's like, oh, did I really say that? But no, seriously, for those youngsters that are just coming into the trade, don't be shy about that. We are so happy that you are coming into the trade.
Yeah.
And if there's anything we can do to help you or anything, give us a call. I mean, I remember when I was extremely green. That was
Yesterday,
quite a few years ago.
when I was young.
When you referenced the green, I thought it was from a little bit. But anyway, okay, we'll leave that one alone.
So again, today's topic is back to the basics. So if you have any questions, leave them in the chat and I will relay those off to Mike and Brian.
That's Mike,
Yes.
He's Brian.
and I'm not. So yeah, you know, when we're saying back to basics, guys, I mean, toss it out at us. I want to go over the how to check for power problems, how to check for low voltage problems. We're working on a training panel.
Yep, we are
that
doing
we're going
that.
to record videos for you guys. We're going to do a low voltage panel, a high voltage panel. Mike's got a couple of ideas for things that are over my head panels.
Something that goes bang, you know, good
yeah.
effects and everything.
All that, and when I say over my head, it's all this stuff.
No, but you know, seriously, guys, we all started somewhere, and my recollection, you know, there were probably a half dozen people that really took me under their wing, and they really helped me to get where I am. And so, if we can do a little bit to help you guys, you know, move forward, we're all in.
Yeah, and it's the whole team. It's not really just Mike.
All right, we got a first question.
Cool.
You guys ready? Kick it
Yeah.
off.
Okay.
Hit it.
Back to the
Better buckle up,
basics.
Brian.
Buckle up, get ready.
Yeah. All right, I'm ready.
I'm not.
Uh-oh.
Okay, I
Okay, this is a basics question. What
Okay.
is the difference between an air conditioner and a heat pump?
the direction the refrigerant flows. No?
Well, technically, they're both air conditioners. You are
The difference
conditioning the air.
between an air conditioner or air conditioning only and a heat pump is that a heat pump can do heating and cooling, and AC only is air conditioning only.
Couldn't just a humidifier be an air conditioner?
Why not?
Ooh,
Dehumidifier
that's an interesting question.
is,
Well, so's a humidifier. You're conditioning the air.
well, let's
Technically.
the condition of the air is what it is when you walk outside. I don't think that's where we wanted to go, Mike, but thanks. So I guess that's it in a nutshell. If you don't have a reversing valve to switch the direction of the refrigerant flow in the quote-unquote suction line, no, you reverse the flow in the liquid line. The suction line is either a suction line or a discharge line. So you reverse the direction in the liquid line.
And you call the coils different names.
And to make that simplified, instead of calling it an evaporator and a condenser on a heat pump, you refer to it as the indoor coil and the outdoor coil, because in the wintertime, the indoor coil will be hot, aka condenser. In the summertime, the indoor coil will be cold, aka evaporator.
And if they're not, give us a call on the tech support line.
And we'll help you figure
There
out
we
why
go.
they're not. Major difference between the two, not only the function, but one has a reversing valve and the other one doesn't.
Cool.
Yeah.
Got another one.
Cool.
Could you explain your way of performing preventative maintenance on heat pumps, gas furnaces, and AC coils?
Yes.
Expand.
Oh. Yeah, I wanted to cover that as well. I also wanted to cover basics on troubleshooting. That one we get a lot. But, what can you do on a maintenance? The worst thing, in my opinion, that you can do on a maintenance is you have a contract. Let's just take a 5-ton package unit on a roof. Every time you go up to it, if you put your gauges on to see what the pressures are, and now you take your gauges off, and you do that twice a year, it's not going to take very long for that machine to run out of refrigerant.
Especially if you use 6
6
foot
foot
hoses.
hoses.
Yeah.
So I recommend that you baseline the equipment. And in today's technology, I mean, what I did, oh man, this is going to age my ass. Thanks, Mike.
Keep going. Keep going.
What I did when I got into the trade and I'm working on these things is I had a notebook with that address and that equipment. And I would baseline that equipment. So that means I put my gauges on once, I get the temperatures and I get the pressures, and yes, I didn't have to do chisels and stone. It was paper, but thanks.
I was waiting for you to say when you were young.
No. I've always been this old. But I made notes, and on the bigger jobs where it was multiple mechanics coming out to that roof, the notes would stay in. All you had to do is put temperature clamps on, which our temperature clamps then were a little different than they are today, a little bit more cumbersome. Today they're compact and easy to haul around, and Wi-Fi and a whole bunch of other tricky stuff. All of my shit was wired. But as long as you came back and your split was the same, your temperatures of your pipes, your suction line, your liquid line, your discharge line, if those were all relatively the same as where they were the last time you had gauges on the machine, I didn't have to put the gauges back on. Then, back in the day, you had to oil the condenser fan motors. There's guys that will tell you it doesn't matter whether you change the filters with the fan running or not. I am one of the guys that don't like to impact the condenser, the coils, evaporator coils, with dust. So all of my equipment gets shut down before changing the filters, except if it was a split system and you walk in and I always cleaned the return grill. So I always had a little horsehair brush and flip the fan on the thermostat to make sure that if it satisfied cooling or whatever, that the fan stayed running, and then I would sweep it because I wasn't hauling out a vacuum, but I would sweep it and it would go into the return filter, and then I could shut everything down and drop the filter, and the grill was clean. And so it's the little things that you do for people that they take notice of. And then of course one shit ruins a whole lot of attaboys. Yeah. But we're in the trade and we're gonna break stuff, and it's gonna be an oops, and eventually you learn how to cover those oopses up.
Well, one of the things, when I always joke and kid around, guys would say, how do you get really, really good at what you're doing? You break lots of stuff. Because you have to figure out how you're going to get it fixed and everything else. And that's kind of an inside joke, but when you do a lot of R&D, you break a lot of things.
You do. And it's going to take you guys a lot. The new guys coming in, we refer to you as rookies or newbies. You know what? I understand you're nervous. I understand you don't really want to make that phone call. We're the best guys you can make a phone call to. But remember this in the back of your mind somehow. You're the mechanic. That machine was broke when you got there. So you've got to get it out of your mind that you're going to break something. It was broken when you got there. They called you because the machine wasn't working. So how can you break something that's not working? You're there to find out what the problems are. So you run into stuff, feel free to give us a call. But so that's on the maintenance side. If they do have oilable motors, you know, I was always one that was all about cleanliness. Today they're all about getting it done fast. So vacuum out your heat exchangers. In my day, the burners were easier to remove. Simply lifting them up and pulling them off, and being able to vacuum out the heat exchangers and knock the crap out of the burners and vacuum the orifices. Pretty easy to do. Today, technology again with the battery operated shop vacs and the different things that you can do. But one thing that everybody will see is whether or not you did a good job is how clean the machine is. A stupid tech tip, but it flies for miles. You change a compressor, get yourself a rattle can of spray paint and paint that fitting on that compressor black when you're done. And it hides the burn marks from when you overheated the pipe, peeled the paint, all that stuff. But when you're done, that job looks like it was a factory job, and that will go 100 miles. Somebody that doesn't know anything about the trade, and you're working in somebody's house, and they take that panel off and see that dog snot of a weld job that you did, that will catch their eye. If you paint it and it doesn't leak, that'll also catch their eye, and you'll get kudos for it instead of crap for it.
You know,
It's that extra mile.
Another thing is that if you're working in an equipment room or any place else, clean up your mess. It doesn't take a lot. And
Not just clean up your mess.
Yeah, somebody else's too.
You clean up everybody's mess. Don't be, that's not my job, it's your job.
Yeah.
We have a lot.
Thank you very much.
So I'm gonna move on
I will
to
definitely
these guys.
burn a day.
We have like 20 to get through.
Cool.
Which is awesome.
Hi.
Okay, first one.
Next.
When you check a two-phase contactor to make sure it's working properly, why can't you do that with a three-phase?
I understand it.
All right. Terminology is key in this trade, or at least it is for me. I taught for 25 years. So you have two types of systems. 208, 230 single phase, 208, 230 three phase. Then you can go into 460. 460 is three phase. Unless you're plugging it into the wall and it's a window shaker at 115 volts, that's single phase. So you say two phase, I'm presuming you're talking about 220, two pole contactor, that's single phase, got capacitors. That's my presumption. Now what's the question again?
When you check a two-phase contactor to make sure it's working properly, why can't you do that with a three-phase?
Well, you basically check the contactors the same. There's check your incoming power to make sure that you have on your, again, I'm using the term 220 single phase. You got to make sure that you have 220 volts going to the machine, not just one leg of it. That was really loud. Sorry, guys. And then on your three phase, you have three separate incoming powers. So on your single phase, you have two incoming powers and typically a common and a ground. Or not a common, but a ground. And on your three phase, you have three lines of power coming in and a ground. Everything's got to be grounded or should be. So checking the contactor, if you're checking the contacts themselves and going from L1 to T1 and L2 to T2, no more than 1 volt drop. And that's the same on a three-phase contactor as well, except that you added T3 and L3. And what am I missing? Checking L1 to L2 on the single phase, that'll tell you whether you've got 220 volts. If you go from L1 to ground, that'll tell you if you've got power on that leg. L2 to ground will tell you if you have power on that leg. read across L1 and L2 that tells you if it's 220 volts.
Yep.
If it's not 220 volts, and you're reading 120 to ground on both of those, then you either got a blown fuse, a trip breaker, burnt wire, there's something going on.
Yep.
So there really isn't a whole lot of difference between a single phase contactor or a 2-pole and a 3-phase or 3-pole contactor. Is just understanding what you're reading.
Okay.
You know, and if you have the proper voltage going to the coil and the contactor's not pulling in, chances are you've got an open coil.
All right. The HVAC guy is asking, how often chemical wash on Evap and condenser coil recommended?
When it's needed.
It's no, exactly. It's only as needed. I mean, you can take your temperature drops and temperature rises, and look at your pressures, and you're gonna know the conditions that you live in. You're gonna know the condition that the machine lives in. So, if you have an air handler that is in a clean room, do I need to change those 12-inch filters every 3 months? No, probably not.
You're changing the ones in front of them.
Your pre-filters are probably going to have to be changed. It depends. Then, and if you were in a place, what was it, Boulder, Colorado? I was on a job site visit there, and that was when the cottonwood was letting go, and contractor was on site. We were doing walkthroughs, and I went over and got the contractor in another building, and I told him, and he said, you got a chiller over here that the condenser is solid with cottonwood. And he goes, thanks for letting me know. We'll put in a request because they cleaned that last week.
Yeah.
So it really is dependent, on the conditions that you're living in. So it can be if you're in a really dirty environment or in construction, and on a construction site, you could have to clean those things once a week, change filters every day. It just really depends on the environment.
All right, next one. This is a little hard to understand, but I think I can get it.
We can help you
There's a way to push refrigerant back out the gauges to prevent that loss, or should I say minimize that loss? I just can't remember what you should close off first.
Okay. So what you're thinking of is you're charging a system. So you've got your discharge hooked up, you've got your suction hooked up, and you've got your charging hose hooked up. Now, shut off the bottle. System's done. Shut off the bottle. Valve off your manifolds, suction and discharge. Then hopefully you have some type of an isolation valve on your discharge, and that's where you close that off and then open up the suction and pull it all back into the system.
Yeah. But if you don't have one, the best you can do is just pull it out of the suction line and the whatever was in the charging hose.
Yeah, because if you don't have isolation on the discharge side, and you try, close off the tank, and then open up the discharge and open up the suction to try and equalize your manifold, you're going to equalize all right, but unfortunately, it's going to equalize at discharge pressure. So.
Yep.
Is it good to measure discharge air temp coming out of the condensing unit, and why?
You can, because what you're going to be looking for is the differential across the condenser, which could be really helpful, because typically with the older stuff, you typically run about 35 degrees. With the newer stuff, it's typically closer to 25. So when you're looking for problems, it's not a bad way to look to see how things are working. Just like you read the delta T across the evaporator coil, you can do the same thing across the condenser coil. It's just another diagnostic tool.
It'll help you to diagnose the machine later down the road, like I said, with the baselining the equipment and making sure that you take those good notes. Again, with the technology that's out there today, I know we talk a lot about using our Measure Quick,
Yep.
and you can save that data now today so easy.
And another thing, if you're using like the field piece pressure probes, the loss on those is a half an ounce versus.
Right.
So if you have to, and I've talked to some guys and they've gone to like the S-Man 480, which I think is great. I really enjoy mine. But if you had to make a choice of going to an S-Man 480 or getting a cheap pair of analog gauges and the field piece probes, I would go with the cheap analog manifold and the field piece probes.
So what you're saying is cheap charging hoses with really accurate sensing devices.
Yeah, because all you're doing is using the analog gauges for just a manifold.
That's right.
So it's just for you young guys that are looking for if you got to make a decision, I would go that way, because then you can turn around and take those probes and tie into Measure Quick or Field Piece or some of the different apps.
Yeah.
And it really helps you out quite a bit.
Yep.
Cool.
Okay,
On to the
18
next
more to
one.
go.
Nate says hi. Hi,
Hi,
Nate.
Nate.
Hi, Nate.
All right, next. What's a good procedure and product to use when flushing existing line set converting to a different refrigerant?
Oh God, who is it? There's actually a company that makes a flush for refrigerant lines.
XR11.
Exit.
Swear to God, dude. It's XR11.
Okay. Because R11 back in the day is what everybody used to
Used
use
to
because
flush.
it was so good. But that's not legal now.
R11 is not.
Right.
They do have a flush, and it's called XR11 if you have to do that. And the only reason, I'm going to get on my bandwagon, Mikey.
Go for it.
If you're using TDX20, you only have to flush the line sets to do a conversion if you had a burnout. And that will protect your new compressor. It has nothing to do with the refrigerant you're about to put in. Okay, off the bandwagon.
All right. Next.
What is a stunt contactor?
Shunt?
Stunt. S-T-U-N-T.
You don't know the term stunt, but a shunt contactor typically shorts the phases together for on part start.
That's a big machine.
Yeah, that's a big machine.
You're not going to find. Yeah, I'm not familiar with a stunt contactor. I've never seen anyone. Well, unless somebody was chucking it over a fence. Maybe that's when it turns into a stunt contactor. I don't know.
Or a drop kick.
Get it to do some tricks. But a shunt contactor is you're getting into the larger equipment. I had shunt contactors on 19 DG chillers that I had with part winding start cabinets, and it used shunt contactors to send the power between transition to resistors, and timers went into effect, and there's a whole.
They're fun.
Yeah, the panel was about as big as that test chamber. So.
And when the contactors pull in, you have a tendency of jumping.
Oh, you know.
Oh yeah.
You know when 26 seconds is up.
How do you pump down the refrigerant to the compressor to prepare the evaporator coil for removal to perform a coil clean?
Okay.
All right.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, that's just a very deep question.
No, I think it's pretty simple. If you turn around and if you close the liquid line coming out of the condensing unit, we're talking basic residential.
Split system.
Yep. And you turn around and front seat that valve, you could pull it down to, depending upon the compressor, if it's, a regular
10 pounds?
pistons, you can pull it all the way down. If it's a scroll compressor, you never want to go much below
10 pounds.
Yeah, 10 pounds, 7 pounds, something like that. Because if you pull a scroll compressor into a vacuum, you can do damage to the compressor. So in that case, I would turn around, I would pull it down as far as I could. I would turn around and close the valves, and I'd hook up my recovery machine and pull it the rest of the way.
Okay, but the question is, all that pumping down to clean the evaporator,
He's talking about pulling the evaporator.
to clean it.
Yeah.
All right. Then do what Mike said.
All right, next one. TXV versus piston. When would it be appropriate to use either or?
All right, I got this one. I've been getting this. They used pistons because they were unbelievably cheap. All right. And as things have progressed, in order to get the efficiency up, the higher SEER ratings and everything, they got away from the pistons and the cap tubes and over to TXVs, because the cap tube, piston, and all those, it's a passive metering device. The only way you flow more refrigerant through that tube is if the suction goes lower or the discharge goes higher. And because you have a bigger differential pressure across there, it'll flow more. The TXV is reactive based upon what the coil is seeing. So it's more responsive and it's more efficient. I had one that the guy had an 18 SEER unit, and he went from a TXV to a piston.
Which knocked it right in the dirt as far as the SEER.
Yeah, pretty much. But anyway, he was in a situation where they couldn't get a valve, so they went to a piston and everything. So I get why he did it. But the thing is, the reason we're getting more and more away from the passive metering devices like flow raters, Accutrolls, pistons, cap tubes, all those fun things, is because they're trying to get the SEER rating up.
Yeah.
Because as they keep increasing and wanting higher SEER ratings, they've got to do more and more. And the cheapest thing they could do was to turn around and go to a TXV instead of increasing the size of the coils. So.
And I'm going to go back to the gentleman that had the question about pumping down.
Are we still on that one?
No, I'm sorry. I just when you were talking about the new efficiencies and stuff, thank you for getting that Coke product away from my Pepsi. My Pepsi was getting pretty pissed there.
All right, disclaimer. Brian is still looking for a sponsorship from Pepsi.
I've asked you guys, and I'll ask again. Go through our post and tag Pepsi so we can get Brian sponsored.
What is the new damn condenser
Please.
coils?
Not the microchannel, is it?
Microchannels. Don't pump down a friggin' pump. Don't pump that down. Do not pump refrigerant into a microchannel. It will not work.
Why?
You will bust that microchannel.
It's probably already busted.
Well, it's going to leak worse. It's going to leak really bad.
Yeah.
So if you've got a microchannel, do not pump into the condenser. Just recover all the refrigerant. It does not have enough volume capacity. Thank you. Sorry.
And why do they do that?
I told you, Mikey.
And why do they do that?
Next time I'm going to put my freaking vest on and my hard hat because I'm Safety Brian.
Wow.
And you're Fred. Get back
Next.
Get back up on your dinosaur and crank that rock out of that.
I got the big old club feet.
Oh, I get it.
It's okay, Jess.
Haha. Funny. Okay, on to the next one.
I'm there because I care.
On the indoor unit, would it be wise to line the box with insulation to prevent sweating? I noticed boxes sweating at times and would like to see if this is preventable.
Yes, it is preventable.
It depends where it's sweating at too.
Yeah. If the unit is in the garage, non-conditioned space, the unit is in an attic, underneath the house in the basement. I'm really popular today. Sorry.
You're popular every day.
Oh my gosh. I don't mind being popular. Just leave me alone at 4 o'clock. It's buckle up.
I left my phone downstairs to bug everybody down there.
Nice.
See, look, Pepsi. I don't have any more.
As you were saying.
I think I said it.
Okay.
Do you have anything to add, Mike? Are you good?
I'm good.
All right.
So when you're in the unconditioned space, you typically have to add more insulation and make sure that it's taped off well so that you don't have air intrusion between the insulation and the machine.
Because it'll just sweat.
Big time.
Would you recommend mounting the TXV on the inside or outside of the indoor coil?
It kind of depends.
Well, if you have room inside the cabinet, that's fine. Put it inside the cabinet. If you don't have the room inside the cabinet where the expansion valve is going to attach to the distributor, the The issue is the distance between the expansion valve and the distributor. So if the TXV is sitting on the outside, insulated, but the bulb's going to be insulated on the suction line, so it really doesn't matter whether it's in the cabinet or out of the cabinet.
Because on your big systems, you know, it's all right next to the coil and you walk up to it.
Yeah.
So it's inside the cabinet.
Pretty much inside the cabinet on that one. When it takes both hands and a little monkey to open up the door to get into the fan room.
Yep.
Yeah. We used to call that 2 men and a boy. High static rooms, trying to get the doors open and not get sucked into the fan.
Remember the big old man traps?
Yes.
Next.
Yeah.
How do you find a restriction?
Very carefully. I would try to do everything without having to go into the system. We've been doing a lot of units, apartment conversions and stuff, working with some contractors, and what you typically are going to see is a real low suction and a real high discharge. Typically when I see those, I'm thinking of restriction. A lot of those are pistons, and so what we do is we pull the refrigerant out, you go unscrew the piston, you pull it out, and typically you find some foreign debris.
Yeah, plugged up.
Yeah.
It's very common for R22 paraffin to build up on the pipe, build up into the orifices. But the other way to check and see if you can find a restriction is just you don't really have to lick your fingers and touch the pipe. Just take an infrared, take a temp clamp,
Yep.
and in any given piece of length of pipe, you should not have any temperature difference. If you have a 90 and you get a temperature difference, the 90's plugged, bent, kinked, liquid line dryers, and metering devices.
When the liquid line dryer is hot on one side and freezing on the other side.
That's a really good
That's
indicator.
a really good one.
But if you have more than 2 degrees temperature drop across that liquid line dryer, you've got a restriction. That's 2 degrees across the dryer. Got a restriction.
Next.
Next.
Okay. Is it better to have your furnace filter further away from the furnace or right against it like I typically see it?
I don't think it really matters.
Yeah, it really is. It's a matter of convenience, and if you don't have the access at the furnace, then you'll see it in a return grill. It's just a lot of homeowners would prefer to be able to change their own filter. I personally don't want my customers climbing into their attic and trying to amputate their fingers to change filters at the unit, so I would put in a filter grill in their hallway or closet or
Wherever.
whatever.
Yep.
That they can undo 2 screws. So it's not really a matter of what's better for the system, it's what's better for you and the customer.
Yep.
Nice.
Because the filter's really protecting the blower and the coil.
When charging a condenser with R22, should it be a liquid or a vapor?
Oh, number one, I would disagree with the terminology there. You're not charging the condenser, you're charging the system. All right.
But
And
now you're at the condenser.
Now you're at the condenser. The problem is that if you're dealing with a blend, you're going to have to charge as a liquid. And you can't charge liquid in the liquid line with the system running because the pressure is probably going to be about double what the pressure is in the
Bottle
tank.
pressure.
Yep.
Right.
So you need to meter or modulate the liquid refrigerant going in. You don't want to slug it because if you're dumping a whole bunch of liquid in there, you can hurt the compressor. If you are concerned, I think it's Yellow Jacket or Ritchie makes a small
JB,
orifice
yeah,
that you screw on, and it's just a real tiny orifice, so the liquid hits it and then it kind of vaporizes it. You have the pressure drop, it flashes off.
Yeah.
the reason that you charge as a liquid is because depending upon how much glide the refrigerant has and everything, if you charge as a vapor, you're going to get all the higher pressure gas before you get the lower pressure gas of the different refrigerants.
Yes. And on the if you're still using R22 on an R22 machine, we realize it's really expensive, but if you are using R22, if you pull it off as a vapor, because everything you read tells you do not charge a running unit with liquid, if you do pull it off as a vapor, your tank pressure is going to go down, and then you're going to get to a point where you can't pull any more refrigerant out of the tank.
Unless you want to get really affectionate.
So yeah, you can sit there and hug it. So as Mikey was explaining, if you meter it in, I've after day 2 in this trade, all my bottles got flipped. I pulled everything out of liquid because of that bottle pressure drop, and you just meter it in. You get a feel for it. You're listening to the compressor. You don't have to sit there and open up those crank valves on your manifolds all the way open. You can sit there and throttle that stuff just like you were throttling an accelerator on your work truck.
You know, the one key that Brian just hit on that's really, really important. Listen to the compressors, because if you're charging liquid and everything, and you're hitting it with too much, you're going to hear a tone change in the compressor. You're going to hear it kind of load up, bog down type of thing.
Yeah.
And you hear that, back off.
And you can, and you're in a noisy environment. Say you're in a corral with 6 other condensers. Can you specifically hear that? You can also put your hand on it. Mm-hmm. You're gonna feel it growl at you.
Yep.
You know, pitch change. If you got those delicate digits going on, you can put your hand on that compressor and it'll tell you if it's angry.
Nice term.
Angry. But I'm gonna touch ya.
I'm going to talk to you.
All right, another one. Is it true on blend refrigerants when there is a leak, the part of the blend that's a higher pressure will exist the system first, making the refrigerant unstable, or it all exists at the same rate?
No, there are disagreements over it, but right now the industry standard is if you lose more than 20% of your charge, you should recover the refrigerant and recharge with virgin refrigerant.
Yeah.
The problem with that is if you're leaking refrigerant in the liquid line or on that side of the system, it's going to leak more proportionally. If it's leaking as a vapor,
leaking as a liquid, right?
If it's leaking as a liquid. If it's leaking as a vapor, then you can lose the higher pressure refrigerants sooner and the lower pressure refrigerants after.
Yeah.
I have a little bit of a problem with it because, okay, if 20% is that magic number, do I pull the refrigerant for 21%? I think it kind of depends on how much you've lost. So I kind of make that a judgment call, because are you going to pull all the refrigerant out of a system?
Well, yes, as a matter of fact, you are, Mike.
Okay.
Because you got a leak, and you have to fix the damn leak.
Well, either that,
so you're pulling the charge.
Either that, or somebody came out every month and put their 6-foot hoses on there.
I'm just saying, man.
Just saying.
If you got a leak, because that is also the other side of the argument, right, is how do I know I've lost 20%?
Right.
Or more than 20%?
Right.
And it's like, oh, the machine's leaking. You got to pull the refrigerant. Weigh your dang gone bottle. If you weigh the bottle, you'll know whether or not you.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm off my bandwagon.
Okay.
All right, if you guys have any more questions, drop them in the chat. We'll start to wrap up here. We're at that 40-minute mark. So any last questions, throw them in.
Wow, we've had fun today.
Always.
Well, I mean, every day is a great day, but
yeah,
this has been fun. I like the and Dave Davis, was it? Yeah.
Shout out.
Give him a thanks for watching.
Okay, last question.
Okay.
He says this is more for residential, but
Okay.
EPA law mentioned if a system leaks more than 10%, then the leak needs to be repaired within a certain time frame, if not condemn the unit.
I have problems with that one.
No, he's absolutely correct. But the EPA rules have changed, or at least they have here. I'm sure they've changed everywhere. Here being California, AQMD took over the policing of that rule.
Right, but AQMD is just EPA on steroids.
But they also, it sounds like he's had his EPA license a while. I've had mine a while. And when I got mine, it was the mechanic's responsibility. It is no longer the mechanic's responsibility. You don't have to, it's the owner of the equipment. You don't own the equipment, you were just there servicing it. So if it leaks more than 10%, it needs to be fixed. If the customer refuses to fix it, that is not on your back, that is on their back.
Yep.
Because it used to be that it was our responsibility. We had to report back to the EPA. We had to tag the equipment. We were the bad guys, and we lost a lot of customers when this first started rolling. So now it's 100% on the customer. I've seen customers get slapped pretty hard.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you've got a leak, you know, go find the leak.
I've never seen a residential company go after the residents. Not to say
Alright.
they can't. And the rules are rules.
The rules are rules, but
Yeah.
I mean, we can't even get EPA to go after some of the bad guys.
Well, we're just saying, man.
Just saying.
Just saying is all.
We got a lot of thanks for the information. Appreciate you guys. Right back at ya.
Yeah, keep them coming, man.
Woo. Use the forum and
guys
slide
and
in the
gals,
app. Ask
the
your
forum.
questions in the forum. It's super awesome.
Look for us. Talk to us. September the 16th. When you're in our app, you know, shout out at me. Give me your feedback. How are you liking the new setup with the tech support line and how that's rolling for you? Hopefully it has improved the reduced the time, you know, because we do that whole 2 minutes or less, but getting you to the right guy faster. So let us know. You can write us a note anywhere. Hit the forum. Hit the App Store or Google Play, and write us a nice review. Give us our 5 stars that you so they deserve. Those guys deserve it, man.
Another shout out. We're getting a lot of guys from the community that are putting posts on the forum and everything.
Yeah.
Want to say thank you. That's what it's all about, is the community helping the community. So for those of you that are putting commentary, suggestions, and things like that, thank you. Keep up the good work.
Yep. Remember, you're all blue on members.
Yep.
And members help members. You know, we're our own little club out here.
Yep.
If you
Yeah.
don't have the app yet and you're watching this, first of all, what are you doing?
Yeah, what the hell?
Download the Blue On app. It's completely free. It's going to change your life if you're an HVAC tech. Trust us. We've been working on this for years, and we think it's pretty awesome. So go check it out. We're always open to feedback. Any units you can't find in there, which is rare, you can always call these guys in tech support, and they will get them for you. So we're always happy to help out. Everything's totally free, so you really cannot go wrong.
We at least got part of her on camera that time.
My voice.
Your fingers.
I'll be anonymous forever. Brian, we're not doing this again. Okay, peace, y'all. See ya on the September 16th.